I would like to just thank you all so much for coming tonight. It is such an honor and a privilege to be a part of this program and this community. My name is Daniel McQueen, and I'm the co-director of Medicinal Mindfulness. Wanted to take a moment to introduce ourselves to people who are new to our program and to tell a little bit about our research project. There's still food over here, so please help yourself and drinks. So I don't even know where to begin. I lost my notes somewhere. They're in here somewhere, but I'm also learning to really just give myself an opportunity to speak in the present moment with you all, and I think you'll be a little forgiving if I forget something and have to go back to it. But we got started with this project when we invited Dennis McKenna here for the February Psychedelic Shine. I gave a presentation there, and it was really inspired to figure out what I was going to talk about. It was a big deal for me to speak in front of the community at the Boulder Theater and right before Dennis McKenna, and it really initiated a big process of exploration for me. And the questions we're exploring now are, what are the edges of the psychedelic movement? What do we not know about psychedelics? What haven't we done yet? What is our frontier, given that we are so interested in the infinite and have the opportunity to explore spaces that are really transcendent? How do we push those edges? One of the areas that I was exploring was manifesting, bringing it into community, making programming around psychedelics that are community-focused and community-centered and skill-based centered, like teaching people how to use these medicines safely. But that felt like a really good foundation for something. But I didn't know what that peak experience was yet. And then I got this email from Rick Strassman telling me about his new research study on what we're now calling extended state DMT. And I realized that could be a banner or the peak experience for a community that's already used to peak experiences, right? The peak of the peak. And so as a medicine person, someone who uses psychedelics with intention to facilitate a good life, and health and wellness, I just started pulling on a thread. And this is where we've ended up so far. Right? I want to give you guys some updates and know that I'm discovering some of these things as we all are. And instead of getting it all neat and pretty and wrapped up in a bow before we present it to the community, we wanted to bring it to the community and say, this is our idea, and we want and need some feedback from you all, that we can't do this on our own, So tonight really is a celebration. We've taken it as far as we can as a core team, and now we're stepping into offering it to the community so that we can receive your blessing, your support, and also your critiques, right? And that we need you all to take the next steps that we want to take. So this is the beginning of again, a community experience, a gathering, and a reason to come together as a community. Everybody's here because we've been inspired by psychedelics in some way. Everybody's here because we've explored that edge, that call that we're now a part of. So I don't want to talk too long tonight, but I do want to give you guys some updates. And I do have a little bit of a slideshow for you. It's all pictures, not a lot of words, so I cut it down quite a bit. So go ahead and... So this is... So as a psychedelic community, we wanted to bring art and creativity from the very beginning into this space. It's kind of hard to see. This is just one of our first sketches of trying to describe what the experience is going to be like. One of the things is that not many people have done this before, and nobody's done it the way we are planning to do it. And so we're inviting in the science fiction element, we're inviting in the spiritual artistic element, and this is just a beginning sketch of some of what we're doing. But it's also an invitation for those of you who are really inspired to do artwork, that I want you to know that it's a core part of our program. We want to bring in DMT-inspired art. And so this is kind of a slight joke in some ways. This is kind of my impromptu tagline. The DMTx, extended state DMT, is deeply inspiring and practically feasible. All the technology exists to do this work. All of the expertise exists, and we're grateful for the cutting-edge research of Dr. Strassman and Dr. Gallimore who've brought this together, and that we have all the means, logistical means, to do this work. When I say it's practically feasible, it means it's practical. We can do it, but there's this element of still a disbelief that something like this can be done. If we receive full funding, we're ready to do a possibility of a spring 2020 flagship expedition, and I'll talk about a little bit of what that timeline looks like. Go ahead. I just want to acknowledge a lot of our sponsors who have helped us considerably. Psychedelics Today has done a lot of work in getting the word out. Matt Bovard with New Revolution helped do this tonight. We've got some great musicians here. Syndicate Studios, Nate here, who's filming. And also, we really want to thank Ben Stewart here, who's producer at Gaia TV, who's helping get the word out. He's here. They're both here filming, and would love to hear from you all if you're interested in sharing your experiences, what's inspiring you about this, that we'd love to get you on tape. I also really want to thank Egon here, Nunonics. He's a good ally. Where's Riley? Here's Riley right here, is a reporter of the Rooster. We'll talk a little bit about that, but he helped us get together, and it seems like a really great team is coming together to do this work. This is one of our new logos for the DMT work, and I wanted to explain it because it might not make sense to some of you. But DMT, this idea is extending the state of DMT is stepping into an area that hasn't fully been explored yet and the implications of it. And it's going from a 5-minute peak experience to potentially many-hour peak experience. And so I've been inspired a lot by alchemy, and this is the Ouroboros symbol, the snake eating its tail. And so how do you visually represent an extended state DMT experience, right? So I started to research the images, and it turns out the little IV needle looked a lot like a dragonfly to me. And dragonfly is symbolic of seeing beyond illusion. And so we came together, the Ouroboros and the dragonfly came together with the IV needle to create this new image. And this is something that we're going to be making like psychonaut badges with, designing badges for our community, inspired by NASA and all the astronaut badges that are out there. And so again, I brought this out because you've seen this image, and I wanted to explain it a little bit. We're going to have some T-shirts made soon with this image on it, if anybody is interested in one. But to me, it really sums up what we're up to. That there's something beyond what we know that's happening that we're a part of, and we are looking for a tool to explore that edge. Right? And so this is just a little update. David's right here. This is Debbie here, who's going to be in charge of a lot of our brain scanning equipment, and this is me trying out some new prototype brain scanning technology with these guys. One of the things, so we want to bring in creativity. We want to bring in spirituality that is informed by science and is congruent with the beliefs of our community and inspiring to our community. And we also want to bring in as much technology as we can to this project. There's so many advances in artificial intelligence, in imaging technology, and music production that it almost would feel like a missed opportunity to not bring in a lot of tech to this experiment. This is Riley's article right here. This is what made it go viral, this idea. And we got overwhelmed by hundreds of requests to be a DMT psychonaut. So one of the things I wanted to share with you all tonight is a little bit more on that. Riley also was able to help connect Pneumonics with us, and it was a big deal. It actually brought together a lot of things. So you should definitely check out that article. Riley, I'm still waiting on the next one. So yeah, good. There's a lot we can talk about. So in the first psychedelic shine I did with Dr. McKenna, I had a slide on an anesthesia machine in that presentation, and it turned out to be the wrong machine. This program is actually way simpler logistically in many ways than we had anticipated. This is called a targeted infusion pump. And you can't really read it, but there's the one on the right, there's a bolus, which would be the initial injection, which would be the equivalent of like the rocket boosters to shoot you into that space. And then there's one up above it called the rate, or the flow rate. And this would be what would be calculated to determine a stable, extended DMT state. We have a medical doctor in training here tonight who's interested in working with us on this, and we also have a emergency medical room doctor in Canada who is a strong ally and an elder in our community who's interested in being the medical doctor for this. And we're also looking at working with ketamine infusion clinics, because this is the same technology that people are using for ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. If you look at the bottom left corner, this is like way far out, but there's like 9 infusion pumps on that one. So, if you imagine a future, maybe it's decades from now, but like a group experiences using this technology, So again, the technology is already here. Dr. Gallimore has started the process of developing the necessary mathematical formulas of the pharmacokinetic models so that we can safely administer DMT in a stable state. And why this is important is that without the mathematics and the theory behind it, it's possible that if you don't get the stable state right, what would happen is that the blood levels of DMT in the body would continue to rise over an extended period, and that would be unsafe or overwhelming at the very least for the person involved. And so this is just to give an idea of the math involved. To me, this is like reading like ancient Greek or something. I'll be able to decipher it one day, but I'm looking forward to people really explaining it to me. This is what the flow rate calculations look like. And what Dr. Gallimore figured out was the actual flow rate, but the average flow rate. So there's a lot of research still to be done to determine safety and the maintenance rate for individual psychonauts. And so this is one of the areas that we'll be exploring. And so even though the technology is simple in some ways, it's still not developed enough for somebody to go out and do it underground in a safe way or anything like that. So I think it's important that I name that piece, that we're bringing a team of experts together to figure out these variables so that then we can offer it to the community in some way. We're not quite there yet. This is one of my favorite paintings that we had commissioned for our program. And I want to address a little bit of it here. And it's important that we acknowledge that these medicines are incredibly powerful tools. World-transforming, life-transforming tools. Altered states experiences have been at the forefront and like the kind of the core relationship to a lot of scientific discovery and innovation and new technology, and not all of it has been very positive, right? Some of it has been, has been used in ways that weren't conceived when it was first realize. So we want to acknowledge that we're not only coming out of a space of prohibition where a lot of things have been not discussed, and has created a space where we have to make sure we protect our community from people that may not be in alignment with the goals of our program. But we're also coming out of a kind of a societal context where the world has gone a little strange lately, right? And so embedded in our whole program from the very beginning, and Carla and I are talking about it, and we're going to continue to implement safe community policies, to ensure that we have the stability and structure necessary to not only do this experiment once, right? The goal is not to do this experiment once. The goal is to initiate an ongoing generational program that we can continue to live into and add experiments to for many, many years to come. MAPS has been working for the legalization of MDMA for over 30 years now, and they've hit phase 3, so we want to think in terms of generations, so younger people who are in their 20s just coming into the movement, we're looking to create spaces. This is my daughter, everybody. She's finding her voice. Yeah, it's really awesome having them here. Of course, I have no idea what I was just talking about now. Yeah, so here, speaking of generations, so we want a space for people who are just coming into the profession to have a space for their expertise and involvement. And we're also working with incredibly talented, amazing experts and professionals who are very well established in this field. And speaking of generations, my intention, given all of the risks involved, right, in the fringe, or I like to call it cutting edge nature of the work, but there has been some pushback and some interesting experiences as we stepped into this. But our goal is to do legal research, and there's no reason for us to hide anymore. And that personally, I believe when I put into context of the greatest risk involved for my family, being a part of this program is actually bringing more health, more well-being to my family than if we weren't doing it, right? And that I believe that there are opportunities for technological innovation and social innovation that will help us make these really big global paradigm shifts happen maybe a little more smoothly. We might be able to use this technology to come up with solutions to global problems. And I don't say that lightly, and I'm not trying to exaggerate what we're doing. But again, psychedelics have a long history of being used in these ways. And there's no reason we can't continue to do so. This would be creating a container that would be bringing a lot of elements together that could potentially create opportunities like that. But again, I'll talk a little bit about these next steps, but our goal is we'll be working with governmental regulation agencies. The next step will be to map out that terrain with the FDA and such. So our goal is to have the minimum requirements, safety requirements that would be standard in a study like this. Those would be our minimum safety requirements. We're actually stepping into a much more holistic approach to health and safety. And that it's important for us, particularly me being a dad of young kids and also other members of our community, that we all stay healthy and vibrant through this instead of giving ourselves over to a movement in a way that is not sustainable. So this is a fundraiser, and we're asking for your support and love and again, your blessing to step into this work. But I'm committed, no matter what we raise tonight or moving forward, that I'm committed to continually taking steps into this path. And a grassroots step would be to bring ketamine-assisted psychotherapy to the Boulder area. There are a lot of other communities and organizations who are looking at this. There's ketamine clinics that have already opened up in Boulder that aren't psychotherapeutic. They just give the medicine to the person. But we can add a whole other layer of psychotherapy to these experiences. For those of you who don't know, ketamine is a psychedelic that's used to treat depression and suicidality. But it's described as being very similar to MDMA and psilocybin, which is very similar to what the work we already do with cannabis. And so working with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy would give our team an opportunity to be in the room to facilitate psychedelic psychotherapy experiences as soon as we get it off the ground. There's no legal reasons we couldn't do this. Ketamine is a Schedule III substance, and it's already being used off-label in these ways. And so this would be an opportunity, a bridge to DMT research. So this is a reference to a Terence McKenna quote that we need to recruit fearless experts to step into these psychedelic experiences. And I've always liked to play with the analogy of astronauts. And so I use this image. We're playing with this idea of maybe having 6 psychonauts in the beginning who would be on the flagship. It sounds, from what I'm understanding with the tech and everything, that it's better to have more sessions with fewer people at this time than a whole bunch of sessions with one person getting one session. And we're also looking at what can we feasibly manage, like how many of these sessions could we do in a day as facilitators without wearing ourselves out. And 6 sounds like a number that I could do. Believe Carl and I could facilitate 3 regular DMT sessions during a day during the expedition, and then maybe 2 longer sessions a day for the extended state. We're not talking about extending the DMT experience from 5 minutes to 10 hours right away. But if we could double it, triple it, make it an hour, 2 hours, those are significant jumps in the duration of the experience. And I don't know about you all, but that 5 minutes or 7 minutes can feel like an eternity. So what does that mean when you're extending the feeling of eternity multiple times? What can happen there? I'm really curious about that. I won't talk about it here because again, this is more of a gathering, right? But we do have these information sheets on about like 8 general areas that you would want to pay attention to if you're interested to be a psychonaut, things that we would be evaluating and exploring. We've gotten well over 800 or 1,000 inquiries at this point of people who want to be a DMT psychonaut. And so if we're trying to knock that number down to 6 and do it in a way, again, that's not just my friends, right? Like we could do it that way, but we wouldn't be here having this conversation. We'd be hanging out and figuring out. We want to open it up to the community, to the possibility to be a psychonaut in these experiences. And to do that in a skills-based approach, a merits-based approach. Who's most qualified? Who has the capacity to report back? Who has the capacity to deeply surrender into this experience? Who has the capacity to stay focused and not get disoriented and just go into a DMT state where they're just switching the channel over and over again? It's not going to provide us with a lot of interesting material. And so I've been facilitating experiences for some time, and with lots of different people, and I've gotten to see how different people respond to different medicines and the experience, and how certain practices that people have, like in martial arts, for example, translate to having deeper resilience in the psychedelic experience, or more focus, or even the capacity to stay in the experience longer. It's been something that I've noticed. So even though there's maybe 6 spots, and there's 800 people, interested in this. What I would say is I think pretty much most people would be healthy enough to do this safely. But for these initial expeditions, we really want to amp that up so that we can return with some good information for everybody and some great stories, you know. So there's definitely, if you haven't gotten that when you came in, that's something for you to take home with you. So I included this one. This was an image that we had made for the February Psychedelic Shine with Dennis McKenna. And one of the main reasons I included it in this presentation is that this room was the model for and the inspiration for these types of rooms. So if you can imagine a retreat center that had a space like this, right, for medicine experiences. And a size, this room, this size is like the stage 2 over to the left, that's this size room. That could then be converted into, like a psychonaut lab for DMT research as we continue to develop these like society transforming experiences for people. So one of the things I love about working with cannabis is how you can have very large experiences safely and still have incredibly evocative experiences. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and to thank Sadhana again, he's the gentleman sitting here in the middle, for building this beautiful space and for having this place be our spiritual home. This is one of the reasons why we chose to have it here. So thank you, Sadhana, for being such a big ally in our work. This is an update of the DMT Psychonaut Lab. I was able to cut down a few of the people in it, but as you can see, there's AI in the corner. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm pretty clear it's going to be there. We've cut it down to, we were first thinking that an anesthesiologist was required, but possibly other medical doctor specialties would be a good ally in the room, a nurse, and then we would have co-guides. Right now, that would be Carla and myself. Emergency medical equipment to one side. And then on the bottom here, we have an assessment expert who's a friend of mine who's here tonight. A sketch artist. I think that would be pretty amazing to have a real artist there to actually sketch the experiences for people as they just, like afterwards as they just describe them. An integration therapist, and the technicians, the people who are setting up all of the brain imaging technology and things. And I also, as a training program, the facilitator in training, there's so many young people who are interested in being guides and work like this. So having a space for that to bring in the next generation, I think is incredibly important. And this would be we're maybe talking about a decade or more away, but long term, it's not inconceivable to consider a future where someone becomes a DMTx technician who knows how to use a specially designed infusion pump that's connected to monitoring devices like heart rate, breath rate, other factors that could determine safe use, and then for somebody to provide extended state DMT experiments, or not experiments anymore, but sessions in a less intrusive environment. And notice the emergency medical equipment would probably be much reduced. As far as we know, physically speaking, Dr. Strassman proved that this medicine is safe. We just want to make sure that we have all our contingencies, addressed and acknowledged before we put somebody into this experience. But this would be a long-term goal that's, again, practically feasible. So I'm around to answer questions if anybody has anything that you'd like to talk about or know about. Tonight's really about bringing the community together, though, and not me talking. So I'm going to end here pretty soon. There are so many incredible people here. I want you all to meet, get to know each other. If people who are interested in being on the team, please introduce yourself to me and Carla and other members of the team. But I will like to say it in closing that, I made a commitment that this work would be sustainable and supportive to my family, and I would do it in a way that made our lives better, healthier, more vibrant, right? And I've reached a point. We've written, if anybody wants to check out this paper that we've written on the overall funding strategy and the logistics of doing this research. We've gotten a good outline going on that. We're still working on the protocol. But we've reached a point that to take it any further steps, we have to receive pretty substantial legal advice, medical advice, and bringing in a lot of good technical support. And I don't have the resources to do that on my own. And the cannabis work that we are doing supports this for me to explore these edges, but I'm reaching this point where I don't have the capacity anymore to move forward without support from the community. And so we are passing it back to you to help us figure that piece out. We're working with fundraisers and other people, marketing people to help us spread the word. But again, as we can get it as grassroots and as local as possible, it would be an incredible privilege for me to be a part of something like that. One path is FDA-approved research in Boulder, Colorado. One path would be a research project in another country where we would bypass the FDA, at least in these initial stages, but still, again, acknowledging that the safety standards would be pretty high for us. And then the third path that we're really exploring is an extended state DMT expedition in another country using religious freedom laws. And so what that would look like is developing a spiritual community here of explorers, right, completely non-dogmatic, but then going to another country where we can work in a retreat environment with medical staff present and actually do the experiment under freedom of religion laws. And the risk of that is possibly delegitimizing the possibility of FDA-approved research in the country. So that's a question that we're going to have to explore. But given the complexity of the issues that we're facing as a society and on the planet, across the globe, I'm kind of leaning towards what's not the easiest path, but the path with least resistance, and also how quickly can we move into this. We get the information out there to the community, get more feedback from the community how to move forward with it in even more innovative ways. So the preliminary budget cost of just exploring the three paths is around $125,000, including all of the technical support that we would need. Actually doing about I've looked at it, it's about a month-long experience. Bringing in everybody to another country, right? The psychonauts, the team, the support staff, that would cost about $375,000. And these are rough estimates at this point. So we're looking at a total cost of the expedition of about $500,000. Which in some ways seems like a lot to our community, and also seems very feasible, very doable, and that we believe that if we just keep putting the word out there, we're gonna continue to find the allies that we've already started to find who will manifest this vision with us. So if that's something that you can support us with, we would be very gracious in that. But if it's not, though, it's important that you know that there's a place for all of us in this, ways to participate and ways to volunteer. We're still in the very new stages and need some resources like volunteer resources, other people taking on some of these management roles to help us with that. But we're committed to bringing this into the community as much as we can. I think I'm going to leave it at that. If you're interested in being a team being on the team, come speak to us. If you're interested in being a volunteer, come speak to us. Oh, I do have something else to say. This is why I don't have my notes. We are, so part of the fundraising effort will be to help develop the training program to actually train the psychonauts to do this. And so starting mid-month, the information's on those sheets that gave out to you. There's a 4-part webinar series. It's open to 100 people. It's $99, and it will give, it's every other week on a Thursday night, if you can make it. It's online, so it'll be super easy. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of these preliminary and foundational skill sets that you can start developing now, so that when we're ready to do the DMT experiences, that we'll have a good solid core to choose from. Also in this space, in September of this year, we're going to do a 4 or 5 day DMTx psychonaut training program. And we can fit about 30 people laying down in this room. So there will be breath work, yoga, cannabis assisted psychedelic experiences, and then a lot of practices that we're gonna teach you, so that you can take them home and continue to develop your capacities. Again, to stay focused, to surrender into big experiences without freaking out. Capacities to remember, the capacity to tolerate really big emotional experiences and to stay in contact with those experiences, right? These are part of the inner terrain that people are exploring, and that we want to teach people how to develop. So if you're interested in that, we're still trying to figure out the logistics of the training, but again, we're living into this. We're figuring out as we go. When I set this date, I had no idea what this would look like, and here we are right now, and it's really great, right? Like the potential of living into something is greater than we can imagine, right? And so if people ask me, well, what are you researching? What's your experiment? To me, that's the most important experiment, is to test this idea that psychedelics can inspire us to do something really big and it not be delusional, that we can actually make that happen. And I believe this is true. And so I'm stepping out in this role to plant the banner, right, and say, here we are. Anybody else interested? We got this boat leaving. Hop on board and let's go see what we can explore. So tonight is about having fun. It's about celebrating and really bringing the community out of the shadows so that we can meet each other. So thank you. I'm deeply inspired by this work.